Okay, we're about 25 yards south of the meeting house. Now, of course, there's a cemetery here. It's a modern cemetery. It's right into my north, about another 25 yards. Okay, Quaker meetings. Basically, they had no headstones. They were, we don't know where they're buried. So they're generally in this area. But we do know where that mass grave is. Of German and Hessians, the German Hessian soldiers were killed here. A lot of them. They were picked off by Maxwell's light infantry. Now, it's kind of grisly, but with the dead being all over this area, in the woods, and generally on this property, actually where I'm standing, that when the baggage came by, that the baggage, they had to bury the dead. The military guys, they were busy. They were walking down the Chad's Ford. They didn't have time to bury the dead. So the dead had to be buried. So when the last train of baggage came by, usually coloreds or blacks that were the drivers of these wagons, the British wagons, had to intern the dead. Now what we see here is a cross right on the ground there. That's a mass grave. Now a little bit of tidbit is I can see depressions in the ground all around here. I can see depressions up here. I can see depressions here. I can see depression behind me. This was also a trench line. Now what they did is they dug a trench about 3 to 4 feet deep, and they lined the dead up. They didn't dig a big hole as people think and throw everybody in. That wasn't done back then. They didn't have the equipment to do that. They didn't have the time to do that. They had to bury the dead as quickly as possible and get on their way. Now this cross right here represents a mass grave of about possibly 100 to 200 individuals. Mostly not Maxwell's light infantry. A couple of them died. They retreated. They were pretty smart. They didn't stick around and fight very long. They shot, killed, and retreated. Now, if you see in back of me, you'll see woods. This is what it would have looked like, exactly, during the battle. There was woods all around here. Now, Maxwell's light infantry exited through these woods. Now, if you're from another country, as far as the British, they didn't know this area very well. When they went into the woods, they probably got lost, or they got shot. So they stuck to the road out in front of me. Another interesting thing is there's probably, like I said before, when these Hessians died, they didn't take their uniforms off. They might have took some equipment, but they threw them in with their jackets and boots, because most likely there's still artifacts underneath the ground here. It's just very sombering to think that so many people died in this area, and it's kind of like a forgotten battle here. You know, it's not the first shots of the battle, but it was definitely an engagement between Washington's army and the half of the force of the British. Basically, during this time, it's probably most likely early in the morning. It's probably around 9 or 10 o'clock, maybe possibly earlier, that the British are exiting this area. They're coming down Route 1. They're about halfway to Chad's Ford. Washington knows they're coming, and Maxwell's light infantry now, when they're done engaging the enemy at this point, are about halfway down the Baltimore Pike towards Chad's Ford. Now they didn't cross the Brandywine. They stayed on the opposite side. They stayed on the north side of the Brandywine for a while. They waited for the British to come back so they could harass them a little bit more. So actually, when the British did arrive, they arrived in halfway down Baltimore Pike. They arrived at a Barnes Britton house, William Britton's brother's house, the house we looked at yesterday. Now that house is significant today because it's a historic land site, it's protected, and it's also a tavern. Now we're going to look at that next. But this is the mass grave of the individuals that died here at the Kenneth Meeting House on the early morning of September 11th, 1777.